What is proof of burn? Why is it invented? How is it compared to proof of stake? How is it compared to proof of work? We're going to get all these three things in together. But first, I'm going to explain to you how these existing systems work. I'm going to explain to you how proof of work works, how proof of stake works in relation to proof of burn. Then I'll explain to you how they compare to each other in terms of how they actually work together. All right, so let's go straight into Excalibur, my favorite little app here. So we're going to first start taking a look at proof of stake, POS. Everybody knows proof of stake from Ethereum, ETH 2.0, right? We're going to start with proof of stake first, and then we're going to go into proof of work. So proof of stake, popularized by Ethereum 2.0, is a system where you get some ETH tokens and you lock them up. You bond them to the blockchain and say, hey, I'm going to produce some valid blocks. And by producing valid blocks, I earn a reward. The issue here is that if you're an Ethereum staker in proof of stake, you also are subject to something called slashing conditions. So what are slashing conditions? Slashing conditions are situations where if you do anything nefarious, anything that goes against the rules of the proof of stake system, the POS system, then they will take some of your ETH. They'll slice off a little bit of ETH and say, hey, you've been very naughty. We'll take these coins away from you because you've done something that's against the rules. Unfortunately, it's a very small, a lot of people get slashed for these small little errors that they make. And the question becomes, if you get your token slashed, even though you played by the rules, but you made a little small mistake, are those tokens even yours to be slashed? Are they yours or are they theirs? Do you give it to them for the right to burn, for the right to produce blocks, or how does it actually work? The slashing mechanism becomes a very important player in how POS works. Now, one reason why the slashing mechanism exists is because in the classic Ethereum style staking mechanism, you know the order in which your validators are sitting in. They're in little slots. So let's just say that you're a producer, you're a block producer, you know that if you are producer number A, exactly what blocks you're going to produce. And after producer A, you're going to know that producer B is going to take over for T plus N, and so forth and so forth. The producers are working in a known order. And the reason why this exists for POS is largely because when POS was first invented, there was no such thing as the ability to create randomness built into the chain. The problem of randomness was not yet solved. And so in order to solve that problem, they gave order to when block producers would actually produce blocks. But when doing that, if you know that you're going to be in a slot next, it's possible that you perform some type of malicious attack and say, hey, I'm going to submit some blocks because I know I'm going to produce the next series of blocks. I'm going to inject some malicious stuff into it and say, maybe I'll do a double spend because I know that I'm producing the next series of blocks. This is why they created the slashing mechanism. And so slashing mechanism is a result of a lack of randomness. The solution to randomness is ordered block production. And this is why you have people who stake. And this is why you have people who get slashed if they're being nefarious with their stake. And so that's basics of POS. Now, with the proof of work system, popularized by Bitcoin, everybody knows proof of work because of Bitcoin, then you have a totally different setup. So in proof of work, you have to acquire assets. You have to acquire mining rigs. And these mining rigs usually come in the form of ASICs or GPUs, both of which are very expensive. And so you're spending actual dollars, real dollars here, in order to be able to buy and acquire this equipment. Now, not only do you have to do that, you also have to spend electricity, right? That's a very bad electricity symbol. There we go. That looks like a S instead. But if I do this, I have Power Rangers suddenly, or really bad S. Either way, you have electricity here. And what does electricity cost? It costs money. And one important thing is that when you commit electricity costs and commit to buying mining equipment, you result in zero guarantee that you're going to produce a block. Zero. Unless you look at it from a long time scale. You can buy one small miner for a very small amount of dollars and spend a little bit of electricity every single day to try to produce a block. And it might take you a very long time to produce a block. Or you can spend a lot of money, get a huge amount of hash power, spend a lot of money on electricity to power it, and if you looked at a small enough time scale, you also get zero guaranteed rewards. And so that's kind of the problem with proof of work, which requires you to stick to the game for a long enough period of time. You do it long enough and you're going to get block rewards, and you do it long enough yet you're going to recoup the cost of your equipment, but you're never really going to recoup the cost of electricity because it's a constant spend. But the important thing here is that mining equipment does get outdated. Over time, your mining equipment will be outdated because new versions of ASICs, new, more efficient ways of computing are going to come out, and it's going to make your machines obsolete. So it forces you to play this game of extracting as much value as possible by producing as much blocks, many blocks as possible, to make the value and the cost of getting into mining worth it. And so where is the slashing addition here? Well, you've kind of already slashed yourself. You slash yourself by slashing your pockets, spending the money upfront to be committed to the system. So there's a commitment part to proof of work. You can't just not commit. You cannot just liquidate your assets. Of course, you can sell your mining rigs, but selling your mining rigs is much, much harder because you have the external forces of increasing efficiency in new machines, and you have to like move the equipment around very hard. Whereas in proof of stake, I can just sell my Ethereum. And so as long as it's liquid market for Ethereum, it's much easier to exit proof of stake than it is for proof of work. Now, one thing about proof of work that you have to know is that all of the nodes, they're all working against each other, against time. And so I'm drawing these little boxes here, and each of these boxes represent how much hash power someone has, right? This guy has less hash power, this guy has more hash power, he has even more and even more. And what's going to happen here is that the person with the largest amount of hash power is going to more likely produce a block compared to any of these guys. But the overall chances of them producing blocks is still equal to the amount of time they're willing to spend producing blocks or attempting to produce blocks, at least in this case. And so in proof of work, you're spending money on more hash power. That's where your money goes. In proof of stake, you're spending your money and buying more tokens to be a larger player in the game so that you get slotted in more frequently. All right, now that you understand how proof of stake and proof of work actually function, I'm going to now segue into proof of burn. So proof of burn is a very interesting system. It actually was not produced by Coinos, but in the context we're talking about Coinos proof of burn. It's a unique version of it that they created specifically because of these issues that you have in proof of stake, the slashing mechanism, namely, and the lack of orderliness, and the problem with proof of work, whereas it's basically you spend a lot of electricity and you're really just wasting power to prove who wastes the most amount of power, right? So in proof of work, you have a very similar situation where you have to buy some tokens. So in our case, we're going to say we're going to buy some coin, just like Ethereum. You start off with some token stash. And now with this token stash, what do you do with it? Well, you have to set this thing on fire and you have to burn all your tokens. Now, burning on Coinos is not like burning on proof of stake. You don't send the tokens to a unspendable address where you can still see them, but you can't access them. Instead, what happens is that you truly burn them. They disappear from the token supply entirely. And if you use the algorithm, you're going to get this token called virtual hash power. Virtual hash power is its own token, and the main difference between Coin and VHP is the fact that Coin has mana. You can use it to do transactions. You can use it to get free transactions. You can use it for a lot of things, and there's also a lot of liquidity on it. You can go to SEX and a DEX here. I totally wrote that wrong, but you know what I'm saying. You can go to a DEX, you can go to a centralized exchange, and you can exchange Coin for fiat, USDT specifically, and you can exit because there's liquidity there. VHP, on the other hand, the only way you can trade coin in VHP is if you go to CoinDX, which is a decentralized exchange on the Coins blockchain, and that's going to allow you to swap between these two tokens. But you're swapping it from someone who has already burned their coin. You're not going from VHP back to coin natively. In fact, the only way to do that, the only way you can do that is to go through the mine process, which is the point of VHP. And so you have the HP tokens. That means that you're allowed to participate in mining. It's like saying that I need to buy some mining equipment, right? Like go back to your proof of work example here. I need to spend money, buy some mining equipment. I need to slash myself by spending that money up front to get this equipment in order to be able to mine, right? That's proof of work. In proof of burn, I have to burn my coin, get into VHP, lose liquidity, lose the ability to use mana, lose all these things just to be able to produce blocks on the Coins blockchain. And so that's why in terms of slashing, in proof of burn, you're slashing yourself first. You're getting rid of your tokens first before you even get to produce any blocks. And that forces you to commit to the rules in order to play fair. Now, what about randomization? Well, proof of burn came out much later than proof of stake, which means that this problem of randomization has already been solved. In fact, in proof of stake, they've solved randomization and it had this thing called pure proof of stake, which is a different flavor of proof of stake. I'm not going to go into that right now. but if you want to learn about it, I believe Algorand runs that algorithm. But in proof of burn, they've already solved the randomization problem, and there's something called a VRF, which is called a verifiable randomness function. And that allows you to create randomness. And so in proof of burn, there are no slots. You don't have people who are working one after another in a predetermined way in order to produce blocks. Instead, what you have is you have people who have various amounts of VHP. So here's a guy with VHP, here's another guy with VHP, here's another guy with VHP, here's a smaller guy with VHP, and you know what I'm talking about here. Each size of the box represents a different amount of VHP. And so all of these guys are competing to produce a valid block. And if you have more VHP, you are more likely to produce a valid block. And that allows you to produce more blocks over a given time frame. Over the same time frame you compare them to each other, you're going to produce more blocks if you have more VHP because you've sacrificed more capital. You spent more money buying coin. And on top of that, you've spent a lot of you've given up the opportunity. You've absolutely given up the entire opportunity to give up your coin to perform transactions by burning it into VHP. And so the more VHP you have, the more blocks you are likely to produce. And so you have randomization built in just like that. And so that's the basics of proof of burn. It gives you the randomization of proof of work. It gives you that initial requirement to buy in so that you don't do any nefarious things. And in fact, you don't often see, in fact, I don't think you ever see people try to submit invalid blocks in proof of work because you spend so much electricity. You spend so much effort buying this mining equipment. Why would you submit bad blocks? Why would you do it? In proof of stake, you have these things called nothing at stake problems where you've purchased your Ethereum, you know you're in a slot, it costs you nothing to be in that slot, your only initial buy-in is Ethereum. You've only ever bought Ethereum. And if you submit bad blocks, you have to get slash. And so that's the incentive mechanism or disincentive mechanism that prevents you from submitting bad blocks. And so you end up with these little weird issues where those tokens, those Ethereum tokens, you might get slashed for things you didn't intend to do. You may get slashed for not doing anything bad at all because you've accidentally go against the rules of the system by accident, not to do anything bad, and you start losing your supply of Ethereum. That's why if you join these staking pools like Lido, you'll see that they cover the cost of any slashes that may occur because they know it happens every now and then. And so that's the slashing mechanism in proof of stake. Get rid of the slashing mechanism after you produce the block by putting it before you even get involved by burning your stake. And so you still got to acquire tokens, but you got to burn it, lose liquidity in order to produce blocks. And so you get this more fair way of producing blocks on a blockchain. Anyway, I hope that helps you understand how proof of burn works. If you want to be a miner on Koinos, check out my other videos. I show exactly how to set up a Koinos miner. The video is kind of old, so maybe I'll update it later on. That's for version, I think, version 1.0 something. We're currently at version 2.01 or something like that. Anyway, hope you enjoy my videos. If you like, then leave a comment below about what you want to see next, and I'll keep on giving you some juicy content about Quantus and how you get involved in the ecosystem.